Welcome to the Smarter Driver Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August, and here we're going to get you on the road to becoming a safer, smarter driver. And no, my degree is not in driving. My degree, in fact, is in legal history, which many of you know is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. My expertise is in policing as it relates to traffic. Here, we're going to look at the fundamental conflict of traffic, which is collisions versus congestion. And we're going to look at the arena of social driving, the challenges you face as a driver, the challenges you face when getting a license or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. The car's all gassed up. We're ready to go. Let's get started. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you tonight about distracted driving. And it's not just cell phones. It's a whole host of things that will take your attention away from the task of driving. Not just your attention, but also your hands are off the steering wheel. You're looking for something, or you're thinking about something else, and your thoughts and your brain activity are not on the task of driving. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some strategies and abilities that you could put in place that will keep you safe in the event that you become distracted when you're driving. Because it's a reality that we all become distracted when we're driving, because you cannot, it's physically impossible, it's mentally impossible, spiritually impossible to focus on the task of driving 24/7. Cell phones. Distracted driving has a reputation that as soon as somebody mentions distracted driving, they think of drivers driving with a cell phone. They're holding it, they're using it, they're texting and whatnot. This is what most people think of as distracted driving. And this is only one of the many ways that we're distracted when we're driving. It's not just cell phones, especially now with late model vehicles all having telematics. Telematics is the screen in the middle of your vehicle that gives you stereo, gives you your nav, gives you controls on the vehicle, all kinds of information, which is almost too much information. I'll talk more about telematics here a little bit farther into the presentation. But cell phones, yes, definitely. Texting while you're driving, calling while you're driving. It causes you to, your hands are busy. If it's not a hands-free set, you're using the phone. It's not a phone anymore. It's actually a computer. You're using the computer. You're using the phone. So these are distractions. And even 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when cell phones were just coming into existence, did not yet have, omnipresent. Not everybody had a cell phone, because I didn't get a cell phone until 2015. I held out until the very end. Even then, 30% of Americans admitted to using and texting on a cell phone while driving. And yes, it is dangerous. They've done many studies to show that it reduces your attention on the task of driving. So if you can't stop yourself from using a cell phone, put it away, put it in the trunk, put it in the hatchback, put it somewhere where you will not pick it up if it rings, okay? Or put it on focus mode so that it doesn't ring, it doesn't put text through, and those types of things. All right, I was talking and I mentioned the telematics. The telematics is the stereo, the nav system in the middle of the car, navigation, vehicle systems and accessories. All of that in there can cause you to be distracted when you're driving, because you're trying to change the radio station. Yes, they have some of these controls now on the steering wheels and those types of things, but you have to be familiar with your vehicle and you have to practice with those controls. The issue with all of this is you're not trained. You're not trained by the car dealership. If you buy the vehicle from a car dealership, you simply figure all of this out. And most of the time we figure all of this out when we're driving the vehicle up and down the road. It's, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's almost impossible to not be distracted when you're driving. So we need to give you skills and abilities to know when you can do some of these things when you're driving and when it is less risky to do it, because nobody can focus every second of every minute on the task of driving when you're behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. It's simply not possible, and biologically we're not set up for that. Okay? As I said, other road users will distract you. Billboards along the roadway, traffic signs, beautiful people walking up and down the road. And there's plenty of those. Drivers doing something unpredictable. I was coming down the highway and somebody was making a left-hand turn, but they positioned their vehicle weird and the other person was trying to get around them on the right side. And because they positioned their vehicle weird, the person can get around the right and they're honking. And of course, I was driving towards this traffic situation and it caused me to be distracted. So this is what I'm talking about when other drivers are doing something unpredictable. Or a truck goes screaming through an intersection and the engine's roaring and they're doing 80 kilometers an hour in town in a 50 kilometer an hour zone. They're doing 50 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone. That's going to cause you to be distracted because you're going to look at that. Or there's strange things along the roadway. In Australia, a kangaroo bouncing across the road is going to cause distraction. So there's many things that are going to take your attention away from the task of driving. Three different types of distractions, visual distractions. So it takes your eyes off the roadway to the front. You're looking to the rear or you're looking off at the trees in the distance and the beautiful lake and the sun rising over the mountain. All of this can cause you to be distracted. Manual distractions is when you take your hands off the wheel and you're searching for your pack of gum and the purse that's in the footwell on the passenger side of the vehicle. Those are manual distractions, or you're trying to change the radio station on the stereo. And then finally, cognitive distractions, which are cell phones, whether these are hands-free or not. You're thinking about the conversation that you had on the phone 5 minutes ago, and you're thinking, or your mind is now not on the task of driving. It's on the phone conversation that you had 5 minutes earlier. So these are the different types of distractions that happen to drivers when they're driving their car. Okay? Strategies to combat distracted driving. As I said, we're all going to be distracted at one time or another. You need to manage space well around your vehicles. Now, when I say that you're going to be distracted, I'm not saying that you should be texting on your phone. That's just a no-no. Okay? That's a hard rule of driving. You should not be texting. Nothing in your life is important enough that you should be texting while you're driving. If there is an emergency or something that you need, get yourself a hands-free setup in your vehicle. It's very easy to do. And then you can have a phone call and you can have a conversation with the other person. I have hands-free in the buggy. And even when I'm on the phone and I'm driving, my attention is not fully on the task of driving. The reason that we have hands-free phones in our vehicles as an option is because it was the solution that parliamentarians came up so that they would get reelected. Because if they just said no cell phones in cars, they would have never got reelected. So that was the negotiating point, and that they said if you have a hands-free phone, then you can have those in your vehicle, and that's why we have that. Okay, so manage space well around your vehicle. Make sure you have lots of space in front. Situational awareness. Make sure that you know what's going on around your vehicle. Do you have one vehicle in front or somebody tailgating you? There isn't any traffic around. And then look at the traffic signs as well for information about the roadway. Is it a long stretch of straight road? You're the only person there and there's not another car in front of you for a couple of miles that you can, take your attention off the task of driving for a brief moment of time, because that's going to happen. All right. Hands-free calling. Get yourself a phone holder if you don't already have one. Set your nav up before you leave. If you don't know where you're going, try and set it up before. And if none of this is available to you, find someplace safe to pull over and do the task that you need to do. Whether you need to look at the map, you need to set up your nav, you need to put the destination into your phone, or you got lost or whatnot. Those are some of the strategies that you can do to keep yourself from distracted driving. As I was saying, if you cannot resist your cell phone, then put it away. Put it in the trunk, put it in the back seat somewhere you just can't reach at it and you can't pick it up while you're driving. Okay? If you chew gum or you have drinks or food, have that stuff available. Don't have it in the back and you're reaching around trying to get a hold of that while you're driving. Same thing if you have children in the vehicle. Make sure you have, milk bottles, food, games, and those types of things available for them, because kids are going to be distracting when you're driving your car. And then finally, technology. If you're out on the highway, use the technology in your vehicle. Learn how to use cruise control and adaptive cruise control. The vehicle that I had in Spain did have adaptive cruise control. And if you run up on another vehicle, you can figure out pretty quickly what the distance is that it catches the vehicle in front of you. And then it will start slowing down for you and you don't have to pay attention to it. The other technology that you can use is lane assist. Lane assist will help you keep the vehicle in its lane. And I have talked to people, I haven't used it myself in terms of lane assist in combination with adaptive cruise control, but some say that it's very similar to, it's almost like driving a Tesla on autopilot. So you can use those two technologies, and those as well will help you in terms of reducing distracted driving if your attention wanes while you are driving. All right, so good luck on your driver's test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. I was away last week, as you know. I went to Spain. Buenos noches, which means good evening in Spanish. CS is here, passed his license or her license the other day in New York City. Congratulations on that. That is absolutely awesome that you passed your license. Congratulations. Simply awesome. Tim is here from Drive Smart BC. If you're in the province of British Columbia and want to know anything about traffic safety, road construction, road engineering, why things are getting done, why things aren't getting done here in the province, check out Tim's site, Drive Smart BC as well. Excellent forum over there for you to get into a discussion with other experts and authorities in the field of traffic safety. So check that out, Drive Smart BC. Yes, they have a very different driving culture in Spain. I rented a car. I drove from Barcelona to Valencia and then across to Madrid. I shot some videos in the upcoming weeks. I'm going to put those videos up for you and talk about that. One of the things that is very different is, of course, the roads are much narrower. There's vehicles parked on both sides. Of course, traffic speeds lower when you're in those very congested, very tight spaces of streets and whatnot. I did some parallel parking as well. Interesting that the cars are so close together that when you actually parallel park, you have to watch the front end of the vehicle, that it doesn't strike the parked vehicles on the other side of the street. So that's one of the things that's different. Probably 40%, I'm guessing 40% of the traffic in Spain is motorcycles and scooters. And they lane split there, which is the motorcycles come up between the lanes of cars and they get in front of the traffic and then they take off first. So you have to do a lot of shoulder checking, a lot of observation so that you can kind of check where the motorcycles are and the scooters. And as well, we have a few electric scooters, like the actual ones that you ride without a motor on them, you stand up on them. Those are everywhere in Spain. And actually, a lot of delivery people are using those, what's the two delivery companies that here, it's not coming to me right now, but they're using those and they have like a backpack on and they're delivering pizzas and other fast food and those types of things. So that's the other thing that's very different about traffic there as well. And finally, the most important thing about traffic, and I released a video on TikTok that's got a lot of traction. I mean, it's up to 750,000 views now, about packs on highways, on multi-lane highways. Why do people sit in the left-hand lane? And I mean, today I was driving on a multi-lane road, people sitting in the left-hand lane and just sitting there. They're not passing. They're just like driving along in the left-hand lane. You do not do that in Europe, especially, you just don't get there. People will honk at you. People will flash their lights. They will tell you to get over. And I think it's a very good practice because they just don't have that. It's almost like that left lane is completely open for passing or vehicles that just want to go faster. So maybe we need to change our culture here a little bit in North America for driving. So here at Smart Drive Test, we help you pass the driver's test. Ask any questions you want about passing a driver's test. We can help you with that here in North America, in the United States and Canada, as well, becoming a safer, smarter driver, or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. We can definitely help you with all of that. Distracted driving. And one of the things about distracted driving is other traffic, is other drivers on the roadway. You need to focus on what you're doing to reduce distracted driving, because as I was saying, you can get distracted by other drivers honking at you. You can get distracted by what other drivers are doing. Other drivers are flashing their lights at you or forcing you to go faster, because the social pressure of hurry up and go in the arena of social driving is real, and that pressure in and of itself can distract you. It was similar to my son was playing soccer today, and the second team that they were playing, oh, they're really good and they're going to cream you and blah blah blah, and you know, in the first game my son's team played really well, but in the second team got into their head, and it's like they weren't any better. It was just the fact that they got into their head. And it's the same thing with driving. Other drivers, the pressure of hurry up and go can cause distractions and cause new drivers who are not experienced with this social pressure to do things that they shouldn't do. Go on a left turn when they know it's not safe to go, or they're not comfortable to go. And this is what leads to crashes and collision. New video last week was hit the cones. Yes, go out to a parking lot, get some cones, hit the cones, because this will make you a safer, smarter driver for two reasons. The first reason is that you will get better mastery of the primary controls, the steering wheel, the gas, and the brake. And if you're driving a manual transmission, the clutch as well. And second, it will teach you where the blind areas are around your vehicle and where your vehicle is in space and place. In other words, where your vehicle is in relation to other cars, other road users, the curb, those types of things. Because if you can put up a line of cones like that, as I did there, and you can hit every cone with the tires, you have a really good sense of where your vehicle is in space and place, because you're sitting on the left-hand side of the vehicle, and you need to know that blind area on the right side of the vehicle and to the back, to the front, and the four sides. Edith says, I don't like to take calls even with my hands free. It is very distracting. My husband gets upset when I terminate the call if not urgent. Okay, excellent. No, I agree with you, Edith, because as I said, I have a hands-free setup in my car, and I really don't like taking calls, and certainly calls that are, my mom calls me to chat. That's not something that I can do in the car. That is not something I'm willing to do. It has to be a quick call, and because they've done studies. The AAA, and I could put my hands on these with a bit of research, is that they've done studies that you're equally distracted with a hands-free phone as you are with a handheld phone. So both of them are equally distracting. So know that if you are driving, that you're going to be distracted either way. All right. John, how about hanging items inside the vehicle? Is it not a distracting thing? Hanging items inside the vehicle. John, are you talking about like air fresheners hanging off the mirror, masks swinging back, and those types of things? Yes, if that's what you're talking about, then absolutely. All of that can be distracting while you're driving. But again, it's a whole laundry list of things that will distract us or remove our attention from the task of driving that potentially could cause that. But again, it comes back to the strategies that you have in place. Is there a lull in traffic? Is there a place where you're managing space well around your vehicle that you can, reach down and grab the bottle of water that you want to drink and put in the center console? Is that possible and whatnot? So know that for the purposes of distracted driving, it's not just phones. And I cannot say that enough, that it's not just phones. Phones have got the bulk of attention for the marketing campaign by safety authorities that this is what distracted driving is. And it's not just phones. It's that goofy telematics in the center of the car that on some of the cars, and some of the smart drivers were mentioning this a couple of weeks ago, that you can tap into social media while you're driving up and down the road. You can check your Facebook account. You can check your Twitter account. Why on any planet do we need to be able to do that while we're in a car? And not only that, I've been approached by companies where you can retrofit that into your vehicle, which just confounds me as to why that would be allowed, that you even have access to social media while you're driving. But of course, your phone, your computer, your mini computer has access to all of that. If you have data in your phone, then you can have access to Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all of the rest of it. I've seen many, many people distracted driving, going up and down the road, watching a video. That's commonplace, I suspect, with many people who are driving on highways and whatnot, that they're watching a video. And it's not just in the back for the kids. It's sitting on the dash and they're going up and down the road watching a video while they're driving. All drivers have a period of time where they say, listen, I didn't remember the last 20 minutes of driving. What happens is that we kind of have right brain, left brain activities that you may or may not have heard of. The right brain is responsible for spatial orientation. So when you're driving up and down the road, this vehicle is here, this vehicle is here, this vehicle is here, and that is left brain, or right brain activity rather, is spatial orientation. The other piece about right brain is that it isn't able to track artificial time. So it isn't able to tell, did 10 minutes pass, did 20 minutes pass? So therefore you're going to get that 20 minutes of zoning out. And if you talk to artists who sketch or paint or do those types of things, they will tell you that they go into the zone and artificial time, the clock ticking over, isn't relevant to them drawing. And that's what happens to the right part of your brain is that when you're driving, it's keeping track of where things are in relation to your vehicle. And that's why we lose track of time when we're driving, is because the right brain takes over the driving, because it's the spatial relationships to fixed objects along the roadway and other cars and those types of things. And you don't remember the last few minutes of driving because the right side of the brain cannot calculate artificial time. That's a left brain activity. It's the same thing as rational thinking, mathematical calculations, all of those reasoning problems. Those are all left brain activities. But the primary brain activity is right brain activity for the purposes of driving. And this is why we lose a certain amount of time when we're driving in boring traffic situations or on highways or those types of things. So that's what happens. Again, I come back to cruise control, learning how to use cruise control on the highways, because it will set your speed at a single, a constant velocity. And you don't have to be looking at that. That is one less thing that you're distracted about when you're driving up and down the highways. Okay? We cannot multitask. Multitasking is a myth. It's not true at all. We cannot multitask. And if you think that you're multitasking, you're not. You're doing a whole bunch of little things in sequential order really quickly, and you think that you're multitasking. And neuroscientists, neuropsychologists have done all kinds of studies to show that when you start thinking that you're doing multitasking, if you think that you're watching television and you're reading a book and you're marking papers or whatnot, that you're going to do any one of those tasks well, actually it shows in terms of these studies that you're going to do all of them badly. That your ability to do a single task is completely undermined and deteriorated by the fact that you're doing 2 or 3 things at once. This is probably one of the reasons that when I work on my computer, I try as hard as possible to keep all social media turned off. I've turned off all of the notifications on my emails and any other notifications that are coming in and whatnot, because it is distracting. It's like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look, shiny thing. And you're off and away you go. So if authorities or traffic safety professionals think that for any stretch of imagination that we're, 2 hands on the steering wheel, we're bolted, focused in on the task of driving for the entire time that we're driving, that's just not humanly possible. It's just not the way that we are wired. I mean, think of presentations that you have attended. Think of this presentation, for example. You're typing comments and being involved in the live stream and those types of things. But for the most part, you're just listening to me talk. And I like to think that I'm really good looking and charismatic and, flamboyant and very entertaining and funny and those types of things. But the reality is that most of you watching this live stream, you're watching it for about 10 minutes. And then you're off doing something else. You're looking at your Facebook on your other screen, or you got your phone out or something like that. You're not listening to me for a whole hour. That's not the way that it works. That's not the way that we as human beings work. We're distracted by many, many things in our society. And we're like, oh, look, shiny. Right? And that's what social media is about. Social media is about getting your attention. Your attention is now a commodity. And the task of driving, your attention is a commodity. Is it focused on the task of driving? Is it focused on the telematics in the center of your console? Is it focused on you selecting a radio station or checking or finding a podcast while you're going up and down the road? Because don't tell me that you don't do it. We all do it when we drive. We're not completely focused in on the task of driving. We're trying to find a podcast. We're trying to find a radio station. We're trying to find music that's going to entertain us. As Tim says, squirrel. Exactly. That's it. Squirrel. And yes, as Tim says, modest too. I try to be. But, it's just who we are as human beings. That's us. Benega, thank you so much, my friend. I'm doing the dishes while listening to this. See, Angel is doing the dishes. She's doing something else, but she's listening, right? And this is why I believe that podcasts are so popular, because we can stick in our headphones, we can go and do something else, we can cut the grass, we can do the dishes, all kinds of things. So if we think that drivers are focusing their attention completely on the task of driving, that is not a reality. And for the life of me, and, I'm in the business of traffic safety. Tim is in the business of traffic safety. So is Goose. So is Sam. And a lot of other people who are here on the live stream and listening on the podcast. The reality is, I haven't heard anybody come up with strategies. All they do when they talk about distracted driving is they point the finger and they say, that's bad. You're a bad person. Why are you distracted driving? Why are you on your phone? Why are you looking for a podcast? Why are you digging around in the footwell for a bottle of water? They're pointing the finger. They're not giving you strategies to cope with the very essential quality of being human, because it's an essential quality of human. Okay? Angel says she's listening. If you come across any source that talks about distracted driving on one hand, but then on the other hand gives you strategies to deal with that distracted driving, could you please send that source to me? Because I haven't heard anybody say anything but the fact that distracted driving is bad, or tell you how many drivers are participating in distracted driving. And the other piece about all of this is that, as I said, the spotlight for distracted driving is firmly on cell phones. It's not on all of the other things that go on while driving. They don't talk about eating. They don't talk about drinking liquids. They don't talk about the telematics. There is a little bit of information about the telematics, but not a lot of information. And the focus should be more on the telematics and the distractions. It's the same, and the switches and the gauges and the computer controls in all of these new vehicles. I find all of it distracting. One of the things with the vehicle that we had in Spain, the map and navigation was right on the instrument panel. So the speedometer was on one side and the tachometer was on the other side. There was a bit of information around it, but the navigation, the map, was right in the center of the console. And it took me probably most of the trip to get used to that. It was initially, I found it incredibly distracting when driving, that I looked down at the instrument panel and instead of seeing a tachometer and a speedometer and, the other gauges, I see a map of where I'm driving, and I found that distracting. So even the new cars in and of themselves, with the amount of information, switches, and gauges, I find them distracting. Corey says, I will say this. If I know I'm glancing at my phone, say GPS, Google Maps, hand-free call, quickly changing songs, I make sure I have a healthy buffer space in front of me. And that's awesome. And that's exactly what you need to do. You need to have that space in front of you so that you can have your attention wane from the task of driving, because it's going to happen to all of us. Okay. And again, if you can use technology when you're on the highway, the adaptive cruise control or the lane assist, that again is going to allow you to be distracted for a period of time, but remain safe. Okay. There are times when you can do that. You can have that lull in driving because you're going to do all of that. Joe says sometimes you have to be distracted if you're along freeway like I-80 through Nebraska and Highway 11 in Northern Ontario. If you don't listen to music or audiobooks, you'll go bonkers from boredom. And Joe, I cannot agree more. There are so many places in northern Minnesota, places in the Dakotas, in Idaho that are just like rock, tree, utility pole. Oh, look, another rock, tree. You know, it's just miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of sheer uniformity and sheer boredom. And it's the same thing. We drove on the freeway in Spain, and you know, one freeway is the same as another freeway. I don't care where you are in the world. I've driven on freeways and motorways in the UK. I've been on freeways and motorways in Australia and in Spain, Germany, the United States, and in Canada, and they are all the same. They are boring and they are long, and the only thing that they are designed for is to move you between point A and point B as quickly as humanly possible. When I used to drive truck in the 1990s, they would get super excited about, oh, you're going to Florida. And I would just shake my head and look at them and go, it's 1,200 miles of interstate that I have to look at. And that's all it is. It's 1,200 miles of concrete interstate that you're going to run up and down. There's nothing fun or exciting about it. You're on the interstate. The point of an interstate is to move traffic, people, and services as quickly as humanly possible between point A and point B. There's nothing joyous about it. If you want to go out and collect your thoughts and go for a drive and have fun, you're going to go out on a 2-lane road, on a back gravel road, or someplace else that you can go and discover and stop and look at things and those types of things. Because when you go to Florida in a big truck, you're not going to Florida to go to Disneyland. You're not going there to see the Glades. You're on all the other attractions that are in Florida. Okay? Beninga, I get your full course for defensive driving. I also learned so much. Thank you. You are most welcome. Jake, many jurisdictions have exemptions for fire department drivers as long as operating for the department. Our department is exempt, but some of us have our CDLs by coincidence. That's interesting. And the other piece about talking about cell phones, I'll finish up with this. Emergency personnel have exemptions under legislation. So police can use their cell phones or computers if they're in direct use for the purposes of doing their job. They can drive and use their phones. But however, I think there's enough information out there now that most people are not using their cell phones while they're driving. Most of them have got a hands-free setup in their vehicle, or they just know that texting is not safe while they're driving, so they're not doing it anymore. Jim, how many hours should we drive before we take our driving test? Jim, I usually recommend kind of 6 to 8 weeks of practice before you go for your driver's test. The other counsel that I give is to take one lesson with a driving instructor, and he or she will be able to give you feedback on your readiness for your driver's test.
With the Smarter Driver podcast, we provide the stepping stones towards your success in driving. We empower you to achieve your goals and aspirations as they relate to getting your first license, becoming a safer, smarter driver, or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. If you're just starting out and working towards getting your first license, be sure to check out the Smarter Driver course package down in the description. Guaranteed to pass first time. As well, if there's something about driving that just really irks you and you'd like to get it off your chest, please leave a comment. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August. Thanks very much for listening. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.